Tiered seats, on your feet, come on, it's the afternoon, you've just had lunch, I know you have, but we're going to come and all sit on this floor bit because I'm going to be doing some questions and walking around later, and that would be much easier. You do not want to see me run up and down stairs after having Caribbean food, I promise you that. That is a fact. How is everybody doing? Enjoying conference so far? Great. I have the absolute honor and privilege of emceeing this session. If those of you who don't know me, my name is John Matz. I lead the creative team here with my wife. And for those of you who do know me, my name is still John Matz. I didn't do that well. I didn't do that bit very well. But, you know, I have the privilege here of introducing two of my favorite people, Pastors Wayne and Libby. I'm sure for a lot of you guys as well. Not only are they great friends, but they are great leaders, great worship leaders, and great musicians in their own rights as well. And, you know, I'm going to be sitting here with you guys just as excited as you are to sit in this session. Come on, people on the tiered seats, come on down to the flat bit. Come on. We're not that scary. I have a beard, but I promise I smile sometimes. It is a rare occasion, but come on, stand on your feet and sit down here, or don't. You know, that's up to you as well. So, everyone excited for this session? I'm going to hand over to these guys now. We've been on Zoom calls with these guys, you know, all over lockdown, all throughout being on the other side of the world with each other, and just kind of any questions that we've had leading creative team. These guys have been there, done that, and they've got the, you know, the stamp to prove it as well. The t-shirt, that would be the saying, yeah. But you don't need to hear any more from me. So can we please give it up for Pastors Wayne and Pastor Libby?
Awesome. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for coming to this session on for the Creative Elective. I actually really want to get real in this session. We've been to so many worship conferences, and we kind of, for the Creative Elective, a lot of people kind of talk about worship, and we do lovely things, but actually I want to talk about some of the really hard stuff, if that's okay.
Nice.
Yeah, how many people here lead a team? All right, so we've got some good leaders in the house. Great. Then what we're going to do throughout the whole session is John has a microphone. If you have anything that sparks a thought, that has some kind of question, particularly about team culture or team leadership, just honestly put your hand up. John will come to you with the mic because I want to hear from you guys. We really want to talk culture, particularly team culture and team leadership, because it may seem like we all just flow in the Spirit up here, but actually there is some leadership to it. Is that cool? All right, so we've been particularly over lockdown, we started coaching worship team leaders online with Zoom. Everything went, God just set it up actually. We set it up before lockdown happened, and then we had this big thing set up, and then we said, okay, how are we going to get worship guys online? And then lockdown happened, so I'm afraid it was our fault. I'm really sorry. Right, and in all of our coaching and all the times that we talk and all the consulting that we do with worship teams, 99% of the answer always comes down to team culture. Yeah. Team culture. So I really want to talk hard about that, and that means cutting to the chase. I'm going to kind of set aside soft, intimate worship guy and put on leadership hat now. Is that okay? Right, and Libby's always soft, intimate, Libby worship anyway. So, but we'll both get there in the end. Okay, so the thing with teams, as you've heard today, as music teams and as worship teams, we've got to get a larger vision. Yeah. We're constantly telling team leaders, you've got to raise your team's vision from music to ministry. From music to mission. Yeah. Because so many worship teams are actually not worship teams, they're music teams. So we come in, and a lot of guys are coming in because they enjoy playing music, they enjoy singing. Some of the singers love to worship as well. So you get these teams that are very kind of half and half, some worshipers who don't know anything about music, and then some musicians who don't know anything about worship. And then, you've got this split. And so constantly, as team leaders, we're always trying to raise people from here to here with what they're seeing. You're literally at a conference where all of your pastors are trying to get more vision. But then we go back, everybody goes back to our churches, and we don't tell people what we've seen here. So we look to our worship teams and we say, hey, let's lead worship. And they're talking about their guitar tone and the arrangements. And do we have to play with tracks? Right? And it's actually got nothing to do with that. It's all about what your pastors are seeing now. As worship teams and worship leaders, we are here to support our pastors in what they're doing.
Yeah.
And our pastors are here getting more vision so they can take Europe for Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? So where do we sit under that? The point is, we sit under it. We don't sit over it. We don't say to our pastor, this is how we're going to lead worship. You know, he says, hey, I want worship that's full of faith, and I want victory, and I want triumph, and I want deep worship, and I want freedom. That's what he says to us. We say that to our worship teams, and the music and the musicians here, you know, they hear these words, you know, I want freedom and triumph, and they think, what key is that? You know, what beat do I do? Do I really need click? You know, oh no, I can't play with click because, you know, it'll destroy the Holy Spirit. Yeah, I know. I'm joking, but some of you are going, yeah. Here's the thing, because I've heard that. It's a huge thing when people say you can't really play with click because it wipes away the Holy Spirit. No, it doesn't. It just means you haven't practiced enough with it.
Yeah.
When you practice enough with it, you become used to it. And then you can flow with the Holy Spirit just as much. It's the same with tracks. The tracks don't get rid of the Holy Spirit. Your attitude does.
Oh.
I'm going to get honest. I'm really going to get honest. Is that okay? Is it all right to get a bit honest this afternoon? All right, so our pastors are here getting vision. They know, all of our pastors know, in order to build churches and take Europe for Jesus, we need, a la David Hall this morning, the power of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
We need the Spirit's power, we need authority, and we need anointing. But try to tell that to a worship team. You know, try to translate that to a worship team. Where our worship teams are so focused on getting atmosphere right, on getting production right, on getting the chords right, which is all, I mean, that's fair enough. We've got a lot to work with up here.
Yeah.
All the pastors have to do is preach. You know? We have to do all the work, right? We have to do all of this stuff to create the atmosphere. And in doing so, it's so easy to forget. Actually, it's more important for us to have anointing. It's more important for us to have authority.
Yeah.
It's more important for us to have the power of the Holy Spirit on us. But when you're so busy getting all this stuff sorted out, it's easy for us to forget to have time with God. Especially when you're struggling with music as an idol. There are a lot of musicians in your team, whether you know it or not, who struggle with music as an idol. They don't even know it. They're not even aware of it. But because they've used music their whole life to get their self-esteem, it's hard for them to let it go and say, actually, God is my identity.
Yeah.
When God is your identity, it doesn't matter whether you get to play lead guitar or rhythm guitar. It doesn't matter whether you get to lead sing or lead that song or sing as a backing vocalist. It doesn't matter whether you get to play or not. You know what I loved? Last night, Sam Tucker played bass. It's his birthday today, and I'm thinking, oh, I wonder where he is. And then I see him on the side of the stage with a crew shirt on, recording the stuff. I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. That's culture. Because he's here saying, whatever you need from me to build this, to progress their mission, I'm willing to do that.
Yeah.
That's what we want. Isn't that like the most important thing? But when you get a musician who's like, man, it's all about the music. You know, I'm all about the bass. I'm all about the. If Sam was like, you know, no, I don't do that. I just play bass. I'm like, you know, you're not even going to play bass. We've got to get our musicians thinking above the music. It's not about music. We are on a mission. We're on a mission to save people. We're on a mission to grow the kingdom. We're on a mission to spread the love and the culture of Jesus, the gospel of Jesus.
Yeah.
We have got to grow the church. We've got to reveal Jesus everywhere. Worship is a part of that mission, but it's not the overall. To worship as a body, is one thing. When you grow a church and believers get together and we worship together, that's one thing. But actually, worship becomes then part of the evangelism.
Yeah.
Because how do you grow a church? The point is we've kind of separated it too much. We've taken our little aspects of worship and we said, listen, if we do it this way, we're going to attract people. But then all the worshipers, all the mature Christians say, yes, but where's my mature worship? Right? But if we go this way and we provide worship for all the mature, deep worshiping, soaking worship people, then it doesn't attract anybody. Or particularly not young people. It's not rocket science. If we want young people in our church, if we don't want our church to die out, we need young people. And then if we're going to get young people, we have to play music that they're going to like. So, we were in this church once, and it was Florida, and there were like 3,000 people in this auditorium, and it was like a sea of white hair.
Right, yeah.
It was old, everywhere you could see. And we were there kind of playing at that time, it was quite progressive music. And I I looked around and I just thought, these people don't want us here. What are we doing here? And what had happened was they were thinking the same as what I just said. They were thinking, man, if we don't get some young people in here, we are literally going to die out. So they thought, soon. So they thought, well, let's get some like contemporary worship band in to try and progress things. And so we were playing this music, and you could see most of the people were like. Occasionally, you saw someone trying to get into it, One, I was clapping on the 1 and 3. And then I saw this one person kind of put their hands up like this during a worship song, and I could see all the neighbors like. It's really funny. I just thought, man, let's just get this over and done with and get out of here. And then, but I looked down here in this row, and there was this one old dude going for it. He was really into it. He was like, really going for it. And I thought, man, I'm just going to look at you the whole time. So I was just looking at him the whole time. And then when it finished, I went down to say, hey. And so I went down and said, man, thank you so much for worshiping with us. It was so good. And he said, yeah, I don't really like your music. I was like, oh. But he said, but I want to see young people in my church. Yeah. Great attitude, right? I will sacrifice and surrender my own personal preferences so that I can support the vision of the church and vision of the leadership. It is so hard to get a whole team to do that because everybody's got an opinion. Well, that got quiet. No. Everybody's got an opinion. It's not like we don't want thinking people, but we do want unity. And unity means you really do have to submit. You really have to, you can submit your opinion even to say, hey, let's do this together, but have you thought about this? But when you get a person that's got a divisive spirit, an independent spirit, we as leaders have got to recognize that and separate ourselves from that toxicity. It's toxic. James 3 has this amazing verse. It's so scary. James 3:15-17 says, for jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Sam even preached on this last night. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, I don't know if you've ever seen any hints of jealousy or selfish ambition among musicians. Wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. But the wisdom from above is first of all pure. It is also peace-loving, gentle at all times, and willing to yield to others. Yeah. Willing to yield to others. Willing to yield. It is so hard to get across the preciousness, the power of the willingness to yield. particularly to even, there are some people who disguise their independence with spirituality. So we'll have a singer who says, I love to worship, but when you ask them to sing a harmony, they won't do it because you're trampling on my worship. I've had a lady say that to me. I asked her to sing a harmony as a backing vocalist, and she said, no, you're trampling on my worship. I'm serious.
Locking her in.
Yeah, it was locking her in, and it was like squeezing out the Holy Spirit. I'm saying, okay, I wish I was only young as a leader then. If I was older now, if I was to have that situation now, I'd say, listen, please feel free to worship any way you like in the front row. Because up here, we're here to serve the congregation.
Yeah.
And we can't do that without uniting together.
Yeah.
And in order to unite, somebody's got to give way. You've got to yield to others. You've got to be willing to yield to others. So, in order to get behind our pastors, everybody's got to understand the strategy of our pastor's vision, where they're going and what they want to do. To see that and then to come under it. All the leaders understand it. In fact, I see some pastors here. You're all going, yes, I wish I had a worship leader that could do that. And just to come under, it's so good. If we could try and get that heart that we have for our pastors. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but don't you just love your senior pastor?
Yes.
Yeah, you love them because of what they're carrying and where they're taking you, and they're covering.
Yeah.
The covering. Man, if I had time to teach on the power of covering, it's amazing when you come under covering. And we've come we've been in ministry, full-time ministry, particularly in worship and music, since we left school. So our whole adult lives. And we've been in all kinds of different ministries. To come under covering and to have that over us has been the greatest blessing, the greatest empowering, actually.
Yeah.
And so to have that and then to try and explain that to other people who come into your team, it's a really tough thing. Who knows what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, I heard like two people. I heard like two people say. Even that, to understand, listen, when somebody joins your team and they say, yeah, I can play guitar and I would love to join the team, to be able to say, awesome, we're giving you an opportunity to outwork your gift and your act of service of mission. It's not just, oh man, thanks man, we need another guitar player.
Yeah.
Is that clear? We don't need anybody. I would rather have one person up here with an acoustic guitar leading worship than, a whole band full of independent players who are not willing to yield. It's that important to me. Because otherwise, what are we creating up here? We're supposed to be up here exemplifying what it's like to live life as a Christian, as Jesus. And Jesus wants a united church.
Yeah.
But then often we put a team on here that's not united. Okay, so how do you create this type of culture, babe?
Oh, look, can I just say, we're going to talk about culture, but one of the things that I think, we're talking about mission, and one of the big things for us in our team in Auckland City is the actual connection in the foyer after the service is probably as important, if not more so, than what we do on the platform. So straight after worship, we are out in the foyer connecting with new people. Sunday is not just about Christians coming to church. Sunday is about new visitors and people meeting Jesus for the first time. And there's something about us who serve as a team, them being out and actually just connecting with people. It's a massive, massive part of what we do. But also for those of you in teams that pack in and pack out every week, we have been doing so for the last 11 years, 12 years. Every week packing in. Used to be 5 a.m. now at 6. Woohoo! But these are elements that really have helped build and grow our team, not in numbers, although it has grown in numbers, but in resilience and in servant leadership, humble-hearted servant leadership. And I think those are, we're going to touch on culture, but I would say that's hands down one of the most important aspects of building culture in the team, is that we are developing people, as Wayne said, that are not just singers and players, but they are people who carry the heart of Jesus, and Jesus' heart was to humbly serve. He humbly served mankind. And so in every element of what we do, that needs to be our mission. How are we going to serve people today? Yes, we can serve them by leading worship. Yes, we can serve them by, setting up and all that sort of stuff, but also the connection. It's too easy to run away and go, okay, I've done my job today. But actually to then go the next level and carry that heart of Jesus to connect with people is super, super important. And I think just that element of humility and servant leadership is that probably an absolute bedrock element of what we try and develop in culture in our teams.
Which is why it's one of our heartbeats as Equippers churches, to advance the kingdom by serving.
Yeah.
It's kind of a, what's the word? There's a word, paradox. To advance, but you do it by serving. It's an incredible thing to see someone come in to a team, and some of them have this idea of, I'm the singer or I'm the player, but then to see them understand the power of service and to serve because Jesus was a servant, and it takes over their heart, and then man, there's something beautiful about what Jesus is doing in their heart right now. The heartbeats of Equippers Church, our heartbeats are there for a reason. Part of creating culture in your team is understanding the heartbeats of your church, the values of your church. Well, when do you do that? You can't do that in the 45 minutes you have before the service on Sunday. That's why we're always so strong about having a team night. Well, I'm really sorry. I told you I was going to be honest. No. Okay. Yeah, we did touch on it last year, but for those that weren't here, just to have a team night, a time where you get together, and it's not about rehearsing songs, it's about creating the culture. And the culture is so much about understanding the values and the heartbeats of your pastor and your church. The heartbeats, the values, the DNA. This is what we want to exemplify when we're up here. It's really interesting. If somebody was to walk through the back door of your church and look at on stage, they would see an example of who they would be if they hang around in your church. That's quite scary to think of. Because what are we selling them? Are they looking up and seeing people who are exemplifying the grace of God, exemplifying gratitude, exemplifying humility? When you see someone that's been touched by the grace and the mercy of God, it makes you humble and it makes you grateful. Are they seeing grateful, humble people on stage? No matter how good you are. John Metz is a fantastic guitar player, amazing singer. But, give him a hand, right? You heard him sing this morning. He's a seasoned professional. But has that gone to his head? No. Since he's discovered what Jesus has done, there is humility, there is love, there is such a heart for people. There's this leadership that's coming out of him that's come from Jesus. And it's all happening while he's under the covering of an amazing leadership. That doesn't happen by accident. You know what I'm saying? And so if we want, there's so many guys out there that are good players, but their attitudes are just not yet developed. They're not discipled. So your job as leaders is, number one, disciple. And so to get together as a team and to get everybody's eyes off the music and onto the mission is so important. So important. Okay, so for example, in the Equippers movement of churches, we have a style. We have a definite style that we're following. It's like we've signed up to the Equippers franchise, if you like. It's really funny that David that talked about McDonald's today? Because I was also going to talk about McDonald's. For Equippers, Sam is really keen on, it's a big deal to him, that when we go to an Equippers church anywhere in the world, it should feel the same. Same vibe, same DNA. I know that there are some Equippers churches here, and how many Equippers churches in the house right now? All right. Hey, brothers, sisters. All right. It means we have I'm wrapped wherever we go and I see the same signs. It just makes me feel like home. And then I walk in and we get the same red t-shirts, saying I'm here to help for whatever it is, ask me or something like that. And they're friendly. Friendliness is a big deal. I know lots of churches want to be friendly, but there's just a flavor whenever we go to an Equippers church anywhere, and I recognize it, and it makes me feel like home. That's what I want. I don't. If you go to McDonald's everywhere, they've got the same signs everywhere. We all know the golden arches.
Golden arches.
If a new manager came in and said, you know what, we're in a different city, can we change that? It's really funny because people come to our church because they like the worship. And then when they get in the worship team, they try to change it to be like their old church. Well, this is the way we used to do it now in our church. I'm like, why did you leave your church? I wouldn't be so hard as to say, go back to your old church. I'd say there's a reason we do these things. There's a reason why we have the signs and a style of worship, the values and the beliefs around worship. For instance, the sound. The sound of an Equippers church worship. It's the big youthy, synthy songs. That's just the way it is. If you're going to be a part of an Equippers church, you submit to that, not the other way around. There's no point coming into an Equippers church and say, can we get rid of all that synthy youth stuff?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no point. So I would just say, hey, that's really cool that if you've got another vision, but I encourage you to go find a church that shares your vision.
Yeah. And that's okay.
And that's okay. Unless it's like, but man, we see so much stuff in you. I would love for you to outwork the mission that God has called you to through our church. But if you can't see that happening, cool. But please don't try to change us. This is not going to change. We've been doing this a long time. Pastor Bruce started this church 35 years ago. In 35 years, Bruce and Sam, Pastor Peter Prothero, Miro and Martha and Slava, these guys have seen everything. They've heard every opinion. We've been in worship since our whole adult lives. We've been in 1,000 churches and seen 1,000 different styles of worship. I've heard every single opinion of worship there can be. We've stood in every worship circle. I've seen it all. I've done it all. And for this time, I'm really happy with what we've got. If I had it is it my personal preference? I've learned to love all music. But if I had my way, all worship would be jazz. And our church would have 5 people in it. All old. That's why I don't run the church. Because it's not about my personal preference. Yeah. It's about me yielding my personal preference to the vision of our leaders, who I trust implicitly. Why? Because they've fed into our lives over 35 years. Yeah. Man, the only reason people leave your team is because they don't feel cared for. It's amazing. There's 2 things that I think that can change your team, that can make sure your team is solid. One is pastoral care. 2 is mission. Okay, let me get those really strong. You need to write this down. Pastoral care. Pastoral care is going to cost you a lot. Do you want to talk a bit about the cost of looking after people?
Yeah. I think we're all called to walk with people. We're all called to disciple someone else. And we're called to be Jesus to others, so to be the hands and feet of Jesus. That's not just outside the church, that's within our teams as well. And I think for us in Equippers, a lot of the pastoral care does happen within e-groups or connect groups or life groups, whatever you want to call them. But the team, the worship team does have, because we're working with creative people, there is it's a pastoral point of accountability as well. But I think it's the 3 pronged. Some, you said talk about the cost of it. I just think it needs to be spread. So within our team, we are a task-based team. We're literally doing a task every Sunday, but the community of the worship team has to be connected. There has to be that sense of we're on mission together. We are looking out for one another. We're taking care of each other. Some of that might be in e-groups. Some of that might be one-on-one with, leaders reaching out to others. But as a team, we are covering the people in our team. I think we have a responsibility to that, and that doesn't mean it's just a quick slap on the back and pray and you'll be okay. Sometimes that's walking the hard yards with people and really walking people through to a place of a greater sense of connection with Jesus and discipleship. And we're all called to it. I think we're all meant to be leading someone, first and foremost ourselves, but then we're all called to lead someone else, to help disciple others. Jesus did say, go into all the world and make disciples. That doesn't mean go to nations. It means go into the world. The original translation of that verse is as you go into all the world, make disciples. That means in every part of our world, every part of our everyday life, Monday through Sunday, we are meant to be leading people to a revelation of Jesus, discipling people. So that the pastoral side is super, super important. But at the same time, within our teams, we need to be calling people to a higher level of leadership in their own lives as well. We don't want people on the platform who are just literally in there to play and sing. That they're leaders. You are leaders in your church when you're on the platform. And so actually encouraging people and calling them to a higher level of living and a higher level of understanding what it is to follow Jesus and what that means for them in their everyday life.
Yeah, well, that's discipleship, isn't it? Discipleship is this tension of you're looking after people, you're feeding them the word, you're coaching them through life, but then you're also trying to get them to take care of themselves and take responsibility for their own walk. So it's a real tension of what's healthy and what's not healthy. We don't want people that are dependent on us, but we also don't want them feeling uncared for. So when I say it's going to cost you a lot, there are some times, and you have to be careful about who, but you really commit. And you have to be up, and you have to take the phone calls, and you have to drive out in the middle of the night to where they're at. There are some times where you will have to do that stuff, and that's what being a pastor is about. Whether you have the title pastor or not, we're all called to disciple people.
Yeah.
Jesus said it. Go and make disciples. That's the bit that people will know stuff then. It's amazing how fast your team will grow when they know you are for them.
Yeah.
When they know that your greater interest is for them as a person to disciple, to develop, rather than just to get your job done. That's where. Now, if you have a pastoral heart, it'll come naturally to you. If you don't, you have to have somebody around that does. Okay, because there are some type A leaders that just don't have that heart. Like Paul, Apostle Paul, had Barnabas. He needed somebody that had that real care, that could walk alongside people longer than he could. He lost it with one of his guys, with Mark, and so he sent Mark away. But Barnabas said, no, he's really close to him, so he stuck with him. In the end, Mark came back, and Paul took him in, but only because Barnabas cared for him. If you are a type A leader and you just don't have that heart, you have to make sure that somebody in your team does. That make sense? Okay, on the other side, so there's a pastoral care side. When your team know that they're cared for, it's awesome. They'll be loyal. They'll place. They'll know it's more than just a job and they're being used and anything like that. That deals with a lot of issues when they're being cared for. But if you spend the whole time looking after people, you end up with dependency and you just run your life ragged, caring for people's needs. That's why the other side is so important, which is mission. 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 For years, I leaned way too much this side. And then I've learned, man, I've really got to, how you wean people off your dependency on you is to get them into mission. Is to go, where is God calling you? What's God calling you for? What has he got on you?
Yeah.
It's amazing. There was a time where I was so control freak guy that I wouldn't let anybody do anything because I wanted to do it all and make sure it was perfect. The more I realized, actually, when I get you to do it, you grow and it connects you to greater mission.
Yeah.
Since I learned that, I can't give enough away all the time. I'm like, no, you do it. They're like, what? Yeah, no, you get out there and do it. No, you program that song. No, you lead this. Can you lead that rehearsal? Can you gather the song? Even if they're useless, I'll try and find something for them to do so they feel like, they're connecting to mission. I'm giving them more and more responsibility so they feel like they're leading. Some people, oh man, we went to one church and we asked for a new song and they were afraid to put the lyrics into the lyrics computer because the lyrics computer operator wouldn't let anybody near his computer because that was his station. You know what I mean? It was his little empire. This is my lyric empire. No one gets here without the secret identity and the iCode and the thumbprint. And because he was using that as his place to boost his esteem, his worth, rather than growing a team and giving out and letting people grow. Because if he was to grow somebody, then of course what would he do? We can't be leaders like that who keep everybody under. It's like, man, I love what John's doing with the other guitar players here, because those guitar players are learning. He could play it better, but he says, no, he goes, no, you do it, and he's showing them what to do, and then they're growing. I love seeing what Libby does with singers. She doesn't always have to lead worship. She's always like, no, you get out there and do it. You get out there and do it. We have a whole college, and the whole point of it is to develop leaders. And so we're constantly pushing people to take more and own more and to push more. It means your standard overall takes longer to grow, but you will get there with a whole lot more people than if you don't. I mean, you could have one great team, or you could have 10 average teams. And I'd rather have 10 churches than one.
Or 10 teams that are growing and incrementally,
I mean, imagine if we just kept all of our good people at home in Auckland. We wouldn't be standing here now. Pastor Bruce is amazing. I remember talking to him at the start of one church service. I was actually kind of in myself. I was worried because I was thinking, man, what do we do? How do we start to spend more time overseas, or do we invest in our college back home? If I leave, there's a risk of what's going to happen back there in the hole that we leave. And in 30 seconds, he said, if you don't leave, you won't create a vacuum. I went, thank you, Bruce. Church is done. That's all I needed to hear. But because he's lived that for 30, 40 years. He leaves and he creates a vacuum, and God sucks somebody into it, into the space. And people get monked all over the world. You have to create a vacuum, and we can't be scared of creating a vacuum where somebody else can sit into it. It may not be as good as what you like it now, but it will grow the more you pour into it. And it's not just like the skills. You're actually pouring into them like how to handle stress. When you give somebody responsibility, they stress out. Then you can teach them about the peace of God. You teach them how to pray. You teach them how to spend time with God. You don't take the load away from them. You teach them how to find Jesus while they're going through that. All of that is part of this whole thing of connecting them to mission. You've got the pastoral care. You've got the mission. Once you've got people on mission, it's amazing how church politics disappear. All of a sudden, all those power struggles that you get in teams disappear. How much stuff do we have to deal with as leaders of just people talking and trying to get people on their side, and they've got an opinion and they're gathering others? Yeah? Okay, I feel like I'm talking to this side of the room. Maybe I should come over here. Hey, when you've got people in your team and there's just they want to do something slightly different to the way you want it. And you hear you've got a great idea, and it's something that your pastor wants, and you've pitched the idea, and they said, yeah, that's good, work on it. And then you hear from somebody, oh, I heard them talking about that, I don't think it's a very good idea, and why do we have to do it that way anyway? And no, that's not the way that we should. That's not the way we did it in our old church. That's not the way Hillsong does it. You know, and I saw this great Maverick idea. Maybe we should do that instead. You know what I'm talking about? And all of that stuff happens. When you get people understanding mission and unity and the power of unity, all that stuff disappears. Or you can go and you have to go and try and put out fires all the time. And it's exhausting putting out fires. So you can avoid putting out fires by having a team night and growing culture. Grow culture. Just get everybody. Rather than trying to stop people from going down there, just point them all towards this. Give them one vision. Give them one strategy. Give them one way of doing it. Like I said, McDonald's has their way of doing it. That's it. Nobody comes in and says, can we change the Big Mac? You know, can we change the Big Mac sauce? I'm sick of the way everybody does it. Let's do it our own way, because we're special here in Paris. Sorry to all the French people. Désolé, je suis désolé. You know, we've had people come in to do that with. Here's some of our non-negotiables, right, when it comes to Equippers worship. The sound. The sound of this generation's music. This generation's music changes every month. So it's almost impossible to even say that. You know, we've got a contemporary sound, because it was like, oh, you're so February. You know? So it's changing all the time, which means somebody has to keep up with those sounds. Well, you know, naturally, your kids are keeping up with those sounds because it's all over their TikTok. We think we've got a modern sound, and then we listen to our kids and their phones. Listen to the stories, even their Insta stories. The music that comes on there is nowhere near what you think they're listening to.
Yeah.
You think your kids are just into your worship music, but they're not. They're hearing that stuff all day long because it's on everybody's stories. And so it's like, well, let's at least give a Christian version of it.
Yeah.
And so somebody needs to do that. I'm afraid if you've got like no hair, you're too old. If you've got a beard, you're too old.
No. No, that's not really correct.
It's so hard to keep up with music. We need that next generation. Our job is not to teach them like what music to play. Our job is to make sure they live the songs that they write. Yeah. To look after them, to disciple them in the word, to grow them, to make sure that they're in church, that they're meeting Jesus. In fact, there are so many kids that we deal with each year, that come to our college each year, that have been raised in church but didn't meet Jesus until they rebelled. Because they were forced to go to church and sing these old songs. I know it seems like, you know, we've got these cool sounding songs now, but these will go out of date so fast. And then our 10-year-olds now will be listening to something completely different. And if we just make them go to church and sing the songs without ensuring that they have a personal encounter with Jesus, then we're going to lose touch with them as well. And we need that generation to keep growing, to keep writing songs, to keep bringing that sound that they know. And that means we can't be control freaks. Okay, all right. Okay, cool. So the sound of this generation's music is just a non-negotiable for us. We've got to keep moving. We've got to keep getting contemporary. We've got to keep modern. Cool? That means, like, these are real. These are real things that we've heard from people in teams. Tracks is a real big problem for some people. The praise sounds just need tracks if we're going to get the sound that we want. Okay? Unless you have like 6 keyboard players who are all awesome, and 6 guitar players, actually, who are all awesome, and 32 backing vocalists, There's no way, and 6 drummers all on MIDI pads. There's no way you're going to reproduce that sound live. So I've heard musicians say, man, when you play with tracks, you're not a real musician. I'm thinking, who cares? Who cares if people think I'm a real musician or not? We can have a jam somewhere and we can compete, and we can, show off to each other, but who cares? Our job is not to prove to the world that we're a great musician. Yeah. Our job is to lead people into the presence of God. Our job is to lead people to an encounter with Jesus. So I don't care if we have to use tracks to do that or not. You can use, you can still do, for a smaller space, we don't need to have tracks. In fact, every Monday at our college, we have an acoustic kind of worship space. We have a cajon, we have a keyboard, we have a bass, and an acoustic. And we reproduce all of these songs with just a cajon kind of simple space. But it's still the vibe, and everybody knows it. When they come to church on Sunday, they expect to hear that sound. That's what's attracted so many. Here's a real big thing. You can't have the music that's in the hope to attract young people without a youth ministry, because they go hand in hand. Yeah. Remember, it's the church vision, not just your worship team's vision. I know of a church, one of our churches, who for a whole year, it was like a more mature audience, and they said, no, we're going to play this music because we want young people in our church. And we were all like, yeah, good on you, good for you. What we didn't realize was that they had no youth ministry. They had no interaction with schools. Yeah. They had no youth leader, or not one that was doing any good. They had no real youth work. So after a year of playing these songs, of making these people sing these songs, somebody was finally asking, where are all the young people? I thought if we sang these songs, our church would be full of young people. And they were going, well, yeah. It doesn't work if it doesn't go hand in hand with the youth ministry. Yeah. And so that's what this sound is. It's the sound of the youth ministry. It's just as the youth have grown up, they've become the church. Yeah. And it happens so quickly. Anything to say on that? No. Okie dokie. Some of our non-negotiables are like click, playing to time. It's amazing how, when music is in time, how good it is. When you start that song and all of a sudden it's like really fast. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. This place and the atmosphere. Because again, I hear people all the time saying, drummers particularly, when we first introduced tracks to church, all of the drummers complained about the click, because you couldn't feel it, and it took all the vibe away. Until 2 years later, when they were like, it's probably not that good a thing, but we had to do this, a worship time without click, and they were like, oh man, I really missed the click. A good drummer should be able to kind of discipline themselves to keep time anyway, right? So don't get me wrong on that. But the whole point is, at first, if you're trying something like click or like track, don't just take your initial response to it. Work with it. Practice with it. Practice enough with it until it becomes instinctive. That to us is just a non-negotiable. Tracks and click are just a non-negotiable if we want the sound that we want. Yeah, especially for praise. We can go from praise and then go into worship without track for sure, if you got the musicians. But how many churches here don't have that many musicians? Yeah, so there's a few. So tracks is a really good option. Yeah. Am I right? So you've got the option. You can use some tracks. You can use all track. You can use no track. It's all there. It's just another instrument that you can use creatively however you want. It's just that when you get this overriding attitude from someone that says, no, tracks are evil. Tracks are not right. Okay, cool. One of our other non-negotiables. Sunday mornings. Sunday mornings for us are for visitors and for new people. Yeah. It's a non-negotiable. We're reaching out to the community. We're reaching out to people. Sunday morning is not the time for like deep soaking worship times. And therefore, when people who have a real love of deep soaking worship times come into our Sunday morning, they think, oh, yeah, Equippers is okay, but they're really shallow with their worship. And I'm thinking, if you hang around long enough, you'll find those spaces, just not on a Sunday morning. Yeah. We have some pretty deep worship here, right? This is just another space. Because it's not, even though the nights are open, it's not intended for just, evangelizing. We're here increasing vision and whatnot. We don't have a problem with lamentation. A lot of guys really want to sing about their hurts and their wounds and get healed before the Lord. Of course there's space for that. God wrote a whole book of lamentations about it. Yeah. There's a bunch of psalms that talk about that. I have no problem with talking deep and going through healing processes in worship and soaking, but not on a Sunday morning. There's other times for that, and there are other spaces for that. That doesn't mean that Sunday never gets to a place where we worship deeply, but we're really strong on faith and on victory. We worship from a place of victory. Yeah. I'm giving you this as like ammunition for when people talk to you about this, so that you can go back and say, no, I agree with you. There has got to be a time where we can sing about our hurts and our wounds and get healed, but not on Sunday morning. In fact, why don't you organize a Friday night to do that? Then you'll see people's commitment to it.
But also, what if we just lift up the name of Jesus and he heals us in the midst of that? Yeah, that's, I think we sing a lot of songs that are kind of pre-cross. Yeah, my wounds, my hurt, but I would rather sing about what Jesus has done and and lifting him up and seeing what he does in the midst of that as I take my eyes off my situation. Yeah. Man,
yeah, again, if we had another 2 hours, we could really nail that. Okay, Sunday mornings are for visitors and for new people. The prophetic, like the place of the prophetic in worship. Lots of people want more prophecy type, prophetic, flowy kind of worship, but the prophetic is expressed in a different way than that. And really quickly, just to give you some Bible, 1 Corinthians 12, 13, and 14 is our answer for how we handle the prophetic in our meetings. 1 Corinthians 12 tells us the gifts, what they are. Corinthians 13 gives us the plumb line as to how we manage those gifts. 13 is the love chapter. 13 says, if you have all the prophetic in the world but don't have love, you're just a load of hot air. In fact, in one place it says, if I have the voice of angels and I have all knowledge, and then if I don't have love, I'm just a load of hot air. Yeah. And then it goes on to 14 where he says, now keep love in mind and then eagerly desire the spiritual gifts, especially the gift of prophecy. It carries on to talk about, listen, you can speak in tongues all you like, but nobody's going to understand you unless you interpret it. So it's way better if you speak clearly in a language that everybody understands. So prophetically, we often just go to a place musically and sing the song that's right for the moment. That to me is way more clear than jumping up and down in tongues. Like I could jump up and down here in a frenzy and go shandala, 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 for an hour, and that won't edify you one bit. It'll entertain you maybe for 5 minutes, but it won't help you in any bit. So love says, I need to be aware of you and what you're receiving.
And remember, we're talking about Sunday morning here. Shout. Pastor Mark encouraged us this morning. If you've got a heavenly language, speak out. This is a good place to do that. But Sunday morning, when we're wanting to reveal Jesus to people as mission, is not the place for that. That's what we're trying to say.
Yeah. You know what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying tongues is wrong at all. I'm saying, man, we've got to, when you're aware of what's going on, it's like you've got one eye open and one eye closed. You're aware of what's going on. 1 Corinthians 14:32 says, you take responsibility for how we manage the prophetic word. Yeah. We manage the prophetic. In other words, if I feel like God is saying, let's go to a place of triumph, then I have to figure out, what does that sound like on the drums? What chord does that sound like? Is it major or is it minor? You know, all of that stuff. We don't allow, like if somebody was to have flags or a tambourine, you know, it would be, well, how do we manage that? You have a quiet word in their ear and say, I love the way you're worshiping. Would you mind doing it over here and not in front of everybody? Yeah? Just those things are just like, and then finally, we're not a democracy. It's a non-negotiable. We have an apostolic leadership that we trust. If we want to go another way, then we're free to go find a church that goes that way. But don't expect us to change our whole network because of an opinion that you have. Like I said, you know, there's now close to 50 Equippers churches around the world. You think somewhere along the line, Bruce and Sam have figured some stuff out. So we have an apostolic leadership, and we believe the Bible gives us the apostolic gifts. 1 Corinthians 12, again, gives us all the gifts, including the apostle, teacher, prophet, evangelist, pastor. It's got all the gifts there. And in order to see that happen, we've got to come under and submit to those and trust somebody. But there are so many people that just don't trust. In order to get that trust in leadership, you've got to do those things that I said before. Grow culture by pastoring and caring, and then connecting them to mission. Yeah. Pastoral care, mission. That will finally get your guys feeling like a team. Man, that's just incredible. And finally, I guess, we're kind of run out. Finally, James 3:15 and 17 again, jealousy and selfishness. For wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. We don't want that evil of every kind. It's really scary. And the best way to do that is to unite people in vision, unite people in strategy, with pastoral care, with connecting them to mission. You've got yourself a strong culture then of DNA where you can, hopefully I've given you some ammunition today so that when people do come to you with those things, why can't we play without track? Why can't we play this? Why can't we do that? Why can't we play more Maverick songs? You can then say, no, this is where we're going as a church, and we submit to that. And if we submit to that and are willing to yield, God will bless that unity more than he will that one song from another church. That make sense? Yeah. Cool. Just really quickly, I know we're already over time, but I'd love to give you any time while John's got the microphone, just for a couple of comments or questions, even things that may have sparked in your mind. Anything. Has anybody got anything?
I'm really fast.
I'm French.
Oh, okay. Oui.
Excuse me, I'm French. Je voulais savoir, quand justement on a des seniors dans l'église et qu'on dirige la louange, c'est difficile, quand ils sont assis, qu'ils ne participent pas, est-ce qu'on peut aussi apporter des chants pour eux, enfin faire un mélange de chants pour la jeunesse et des chants pour les seniors?
For the older people, like in the church, is it okay to mix it up a bit with older songs for them and also younger style music for the most part?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think overall, we're talking very much from, our Equippers movement. We know there are other ex-churches and others here. So it's following the vision of your church. And I think when we talk about music styles, I think we're probably talking about the sound that comes through that. So for us, we're about faith-sounding songs. We're about victory. We're about freedom. The song we did today, Praise, is an elevation song. and it's got kind of a different vibe and style, but it still carries a sound of praise and faith and freedom and victory. And so I think mixing up songs, if they're carrying that same style or vibe that carries the heart of your church, is absolutely fine. You know, you've got to look at your congregation and who the people are, but then still pushing forward into reaching another generation. I think the generational thing is really important. We don't want to lose people, but we want to engage people in mission as well. So stylistically, it's more as a church saying, what is our sound? What is our vision and our mission, and who are we trying to reach? And then we formulate that accordingly. Does that make sense?
if you had 3 new songs and 1 older song, I'm sure it would be fine.
Yeah, we have throwbacks often.
Yeah, we often have a throwback song, but for me, they don't throw back far enough because they're just. What was the song that somebody thought was a hymn?
Oh, it probably isn't relevant here.
No.
It was written when I was, oh, no.
Yeah. There was a song from the 80s, and some kid kind of said, I remember singing that hymn. And
But this was in the 90s, they said.
Oh,
It was
90s.
only it was like 15 years old. I remember that hymn. I'm like, oh, that was written before you were born. Anyway.
So, yeah, no, but it's a good question, merci.
Yeah, did that answer? Okay.
I mean, today, David Hall saying, I love you, Lord.
It's a classic.
I lift my voice. We were laughing at lunch over some of the old songs, that we listened to. It's nice again for the older ones, but then if your vision and strategy of your church is to attract younger people, we have to lean more towards that.
Yeah.
Anything else? That was a great question.
Thank you.
Holger.
Yeah, you said that youth ministry should be connected with worship because it's actually it belongs together. How would you recommend to connect it? So, because very often I think these are a little bit separate groups.
Yeah.
For me, that was a new aspect.
Yeah, sorry. No, I didn't mean like literally connect worship to youth ministry. I mean, your church should have a youth ministry so that there's a purpose to having the younger sounding songs. I'm thinking back in the decades where Friday night youth was like really pumping and on fire, but Sunday morning worship was so different.
It was too disconnected.
It was way disconnected. So people would leave youth and then try to come to church on Sunday, and it was just so different that they wouldn't connect. They'd end up leaving. Or youth church split and became their own church. And that's the last thing we want. So if we combine everything and everybody works together, that's what we mean.
Yeah.
One last one.
Hi. You highlighted the importance of a team night, where it's not about practice, but it should be about vision and purpose. How do you create such a team night?
Okay, so we have like some specific things that we can recommend for sure of how a night goes like that. And basically it's, you have some connection time, you worship together, you talk culture, you allow the worship to go deep, so there's some prophetic stuff. And then there's usually some musical upskilling, maybe even a little bit of rehearsal. But
it's not just about we get together to rehearse for Sunday. It's a bigger picture.
Yeah. And even for the production team to come to that is so important, because then it stops being about these separate teams. It's one big team following one vision. We're all building the atmosphere for Sunday. If you come to see us afterwards, I'd love to talk more about that. We do have coaching available if you want to just talk more and more and more about leadership. And simply you go to myworshipcoach.com, myworshipcoach.com, and we can talk you through more because we're already run out of time. Yeah. Cool? All right, John, any last thoughts from you?
No, I don't think so.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you for staying extra time just for us today. It's been wonderful spending time with you, and we're looking forward to worshiping together more.
Come on, can we give these guys a big hand? So make sure you're back in this room for 7:15 tonight. The service actually starts with a pre-show. Let's make sure we're all there for that. So it's not 7:30, 7:15. And if you are part of it, there's the European Worship Pastors gathering at 4 over in the Harbour Suite. If you haven't got an invite to that and you'd really like to come talk to us afterwards, that would be really good. Apart from that, enjoy your afternoon, and we'll see you back here at 7:15. Thank you.